Ottawa.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, November 9th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees, 8 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It wasn't unexpected, but the province's fourth wave of COVID pandemic is once again on the rise. Now, Laura Carney joins us this morning with what the experts are saying.
As more people head indoors amid cooling temperatures and the lifting of capacity limits, the rise in daily COVID-19 cases have been climbing. The 7-day average for infections in this province has risen to 476 from 362 a week ago. The head of the Science Advisory Table, Dr. Peter Uni, says in addition to the lifting of capacity restrictions and the high vaccination rate, people may be taking fewer precautions. Uni says reintroducing capacity limits may help the situation, but says people can also help by avoiding large crowds, wearing masks while indoors, and working from home if possible. Experts say there's no need to panic. A public health professor at the University of Toronto says the trend isn't too worrying yet, but is urging those still unvaccinated to get the shot. Laura Carney, City News.
City News time, 9:01, and now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Temperatures well above average for us today. The high 14 degrees, the average high is about 6. Clouds may dominate in most areas for most of the day. 3 degrees for the low, some showers overnight, and then we'll clear out tomorrow. Mainly sunny for a good portion of the day, the high 11. For today, the high 14.
And right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees, it's 8 in Smiths Falls. While today's weather may not have you thinking snow, it isn't that far off, and it seems Ontario drivers are preparing better this year than in previous years. A new Leger poll for the Tire and Rubber Association of Canada found 73% of drivers in the province say they do have winter tires. That's up from 66% last year. The survey says a key reason for the increase, driver experience. 78% of motorists who have winter tires say that saved them from either losing control or getting in a crash. Other findings from that poll among those not using winter tires, 56% say all seasons are good enough, 29% cite the cost. 2 trains collided at Belfast Maintenance Yard. In a memo to Council, Transit Service says this will not impact the return to service plan. It was about 10:30 yesterday morning. One train car was towing another in for maintenance, regular service, when the two somehow came in contact with each other. The damage included windshield glass, wipers, and the exterior panels on both. The tow was halted immediately. An assessment and a report into the damage and cause began. Transportation Safety Board even had a little look. No injuries were reported. Now we'll have more on the LRT and city issues coming up shortly on the Rob Snow Show. A Leger poll has found Canadians are split on how they rate the federal government effort to address climate change. Half the respondents agreed Canada has taken great strides, but 40% disagree. 69% support Canada's announcement at COP26 that will cap and reduce pollution from oil and gas sector toward net zero by the year 2050. City News time at 9:03. General Electric is splitting into 3 separate companies.
The company, which dates back to 1892, said on Tuesday that it plans a spin-off of its healthcare business in early 2023 and its energy segment in early 2024. GE anticipates keeping an almost 20% stake in the healthcare unit. The company expects one-time separation, transition, and operational costs of approximately $2 billion related to the actions. Shares jumped more than 8% before the market opened. I'm Julie Walker.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I am loving this weather wind streak. It makes the time change almost bearable. Almost. Usually takes me a couple of days to adjust to the time change, but this weather makes it a little easier. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. We are very, very, very busy around here today. There is a lot happening, and we're going to do our best to stay on top of it all for you. And thanks so much for spending part of the day with us. We love it when you do that. We have city issues in focus. We have provincial affairs in focus. We're heavy duty into economic issues this morning and a little bit of federal politics as well. Coming up shortly, City Councillor Riley Brockington. He represents River Ward. Lots to talk about with him. In addition to being a city councillor, Mr. Brockington is also a transit commissioner. And as we have been reporting this morning, yet another issue with our light rail system. This is day 51 without a serviceable light rail system in Ottawa. And the hits just keep on coming, so to speak. Turns out they're playing bumper cars down there at the train yards. Like the world's most expensive game of bumper cars. And this is reportedly the third such incident in the maintenance yard for light rail. Bumper cars, they're playing bumper cars. You know, we have problems at the yard. We have problems on the tracks. We have problems with the trains and the switches and the wheels and it just never seems to end. And I would remind you, City Council meeting tomorrow. The calls will go out for yeas and nays again. Should we have a judicial inquiry into this entire affair? Councillor McKenney's motion. Have a judicial inquiry into this entire affair from start to finish. Up for a vote tomorrow. City Council meeting. We'll have it for you here on City News and Rogers Television. The mayor and his allies maneuvered to prevent this vote from even happening the first time around. And I think the second time around, they're going to have to eat some humble pie. Okay, I would like to think so anyway, and at least allow the vote to take place, even though I don't think the vote is going to go anywhere. The allies will shoot that down. They'll stick with the Auditor General's report. And those who vote against having a judicial inquiry and instead favor moving ahead with this already approved Auditor General's investigation, well, they will have to explain to their constituents why they preferred that course of action at a time when the election campaign is underway in their wards and citywide next year. And let the chips fall where they may. Meantime, you have this incredible report from Joanne Chianello at the Public Broadcaster. Very interesting report this morning about a man named Brian Guest. Ultimate City Hall insider there. He has been knee-deep into the light rail file at the City of Ottawa for years as a consultant. And I mean for years, going back to the very earliest days. He's up to his eyeballs in the whole thing, in the whole development of light rail in this city. And he apparently fired off an email to his old buddy, Bob Chiarelli, former mayor, regional chair, Liberal MPP and cabinet minister, about comments that Bob Chiarelli made on The Rob Snow Show here on City News. Quote from Joanne Chianello's report for CBC Ottawa this morning. Quote, a couple of days after council chose to go the Auditor General route, Chiarelli mentioned in passing during a radio interview, a new council could still decide to order up a judicial inquiry. That radio interview was my radio interview with Bob Chiarelli. Anyway, the Public Broadcaster managed to get its hands on an email that Brian Guest fired off to Bob after that interview. And in it, Mr. Guest says, quote, you know who you are screwing with? You know who you are screwing with this support for the judicial inquiry, right? Someone who has always been your loyal friend and service. You know who you are screwing with this support? Do you know who you are screwing with? A judicial inquiry would, quote, serve no purpose other than to completely destabilize the system, the current projects under construction, and our ability to put pressure on upper levels of government for phase 3 funding, end quote. To which, when I read that this morning, I thought, well, why would anyone be worried about getting screwed? Because of an inquiry. Why are you worried about getting screwed by an inquiry? Where we have a judge and hands-on Bibles. I promise to tell the truth. Why are you worried about that? Why would anybody be worried about that? It's a curious turn of phrase. Perhaps there's nothing to it, and he's really just worried about the future of light rail in the city, wants what's best for public transit and the city and its citizens. Maybe that's it. Anyway, we're going to get into all of this and the police budget. Councillor Brockington, our guest this morning. Professor Ian Lee joins us every Tuesday morning, Professor of Management at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. We're going to talk about the top management at Air Canada. The professor is quite worked up about this whole business, about the CEO of Air Canada not being able to speak French despite living in Montreal for 14 years, and despite that Air Canada is headquartered in Montreal. It has certainly lit a fire under every francophone politician of note. There's a real pile-on happening against the CEO of Air Canada. Everyone from the Prime Minister to the Premier of Quebec to Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister, who says the CEO's language skills should be part of his annual performance review. I don't think everyone quite sees it that way. Most people, I think, including the professor, just want the person running Air Canada to have the appropriate skills to be able to run an airline. Being able to carry on a conversation in French might be nice, but is it really vital to running an airline? We'll get into that this morning, plus a bunch of other issues. I'm sure supply management will probably come up. Supply management in the agri-economy, milk prices going up, and the dairy farmers in the crosshairs of the economic purists. Once again, milk prices going up 8% at the farm gate. Meantime, there's a report this morning, prime rib, not supply managed, prices up 20%. Prime rib has never been so expensive, and nobody is calling for the heads of cattle ranchers. Even though the issues are the same, input costs for the farmer. Lots of political coverage coming up this morning. Usually on Thursdays, we would sink our teeth into provincial affairs and do Ontario politics this week, but we have special Remembrance Day program planned for Thursday. So we're going to boot around the big issues at Queen's Park this morning. For example, Randy Hillier, the landowner rebel from the Lanark Highlands, he of the suspenders and the COVID conspiracies, plans to run for premier and create his own political party inspired by Mad Max and the PPC. Now, I don't think most people would give Mr. Hillier much of a shot. That's not really the issue. The issue is, depending on how many candidates he can get signed up to actually run in the election, can a new, say, rebel-type party, PPC-type party, siphon off enough support, say, from Doug Ford's PC party to do some serious damage and maybe even upset Doug Ford's chances of re-election in June of next year? I think that's one of the early questions right now. And in addition to that, and something worth paying attention to, Doug Ford is staking a lot of the PC re-election chances on highways. Used to be the Ford brothers. Used to say, subways. We love subways, not surface light rail. Maybe now we know why. Two big projects are going to play a major role in this upcoming provincial election campaign. One is called Highway 413, also known as GTA West. Get used to hearing that, folks. Highway 14, GTA West. They're going to pave paradise, all of this stuff. The 413 would run north of, picture, it's all the northern western part of the GTA. Vaughan, down through Brampton, Halton Hills. Lot of local opposition to this. from residents, from municipal politicians, and all the opposition parties at Queen's Park. And then yesterday, Premier Ford announced his government's plan to move ahead with another project called the Bradford Bypass. And there's already political intrigue about that project, the Bradford Bypass, because there have been investigative reports by the Toronto Star and the National Observer suggesting that the Ford PCs are going to reroute that project so as to avoid a golf course owned by the father of a PC MPP by the name of Stan Cho. But for the Ford government, the strategy is clear. It's about votes in the burbs, traffic congestion all across the GTA, and they think these projects are going to be political winners for people who drive cars. And the fact is, the Ford government is putting mega bucks into public transit. The Ontario line in Toronto, for example, $28 billion public transit project. A sum of money that dwarfs whatever these two road projects will ever end up costing. So we'll get into that this morning. Syndicated columnist, former Harper speechwriter Michael Taube back on City News right after the 11 o'clock news. Always a hot take. And we'll get into the problems in Conservative land. Gosh almighty. Another day of the Conservative Party of Canada spinning its wheels and going nowhere fast on, of all issues, 7 weeks after the election, mandatory vaccines for MPs. Yep, still making the news. Still making the news. 9th day of November. Still making news. Columnist still writing about it. I'm still talking about it on the radio. I want to talk about it on the radio with you this morning because every morning we do the talkback hour. Okay, between 10 and 11 o'clock. It was a little quiet yesterday. I hope it's busier this morning, okay? It's very important. So now we can fill that with guests. We can do political panels, okay? We can read horoscopes on the air. We can have psychics. We can muse about the latest YouTube cat videos if you want. I would prefer to take your phone calls. That's why we set that hour aside, just for you and your opinions. I know a lot of you voted Conservative. You donate to the Conservative Party. You put the election signs on your front lawn. Some of you go door knocking, make calls, volunteer. I want to ask you, how is O'Toole handling things in your opinion? His leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada since the election. The prevailing opinion, I know this because I asked you at the time, you had a lot of opinions. The prevailing one, though, immediately after the election was, from you, give the guy a break. Give the guy a chance. It was his first go-around in an election campaign as the leader of the Conservative Party. Of course he deserves another shot. We can't always be switching leaders, us Conservatives, you know? So it's been 7 weeks now. And under his watch, the party can't seem to get out from underneath this issue of mandatory vaccinations for MPs in order to sit in the House of Commons, an issue that most Canadians find silly. And in the meantime, Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals are getting a free ride. The Conservatives don't look like they're up to the job, quite frankly, of governing the country. So what should happen to Aaron O'Toole? Should he be replaced as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? Or do you give the guy another shot? That's our talkback hour question this morning. Have your say during your hour on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
City Councillor and Transit Commissioner Riley Brockington joins me this morning on City News. Good morning, Councillor.
Good morning, Rob. Thank you for having me on.
What is your reaction to the latest incident in the maintenance yard for light rail?
Well, it just keeps happening. I mean, OC Transpo's trying to get ahead of this and get the trains running. I think by the end of the week it's quite possible, but as perhaps maybe more trains are being used or in that vicinity. We saw an accident yesterday where one train being pulled by another, I guess it stopped abruptly, but the second train hit the first train and caused some damage. So it's these incidents seem to be happening. Again, we have incidents with buses. Buses get into accidents on the streets as well, but certainly anything that happens with a train in Ottawa seems to be front page news.
Well, yeah, obviously so. So I guess the bigger question is, all of this is happening. We've had 51 days now without a functioning light rail system in the city of Ottawa. There was a motion to have a judicial inquiry a few weeks ago. There was maneuvering that cut that off at the pass, but it is being represented tomorrow at the city council meeting, if there is a vote allowed to take place and there's no more procedural maneuvering by the mayor. And that comes up for a vote, to have a judicial inquiry into light rail. How will you be voting?
I want to ask questions about what will be the added benefit of having an inquiry compared to the audit that council's already agreed to. I was very open to a fulsome debate when both were on the table. Ultimately, only a vote was held on an audit. I voted in favor of the audit because I wanted something as opposed to nothing. The other main issue with an inquiry that concerns me is cost. And I've heard some councillors say, well, it doesn't matter what the cost is. Those comments concern me. I do think we need to be aware of cost and timelines of this project. So I'm not against getting into the weeds and trying to identify mistakes that have happened to ensure going forward that's corrected and to hold people accountable. But I don't want an inquiry that lasts for years and costs $20 million. So I'm not...
Right. But let's put things into perspective here, okay? And I'm just playing devil's advocate here, Councillor, okay? Everybody mentions the cost and the time because there have been these undertakings in other municipalities, and I appreciate that. But some of those other inquiries have had some damning revelations come out of it. Some of the inquiries have had none. But nevertheless, others have found poor governance, lack of oversight, cronyism, and nepotism, and others have found outright bribery and corruption. So what if it takes, this would be the counter-argument, so what if it takes 2 or 3 years and $20 million if it uncovers something like that on a $2 billion project? It's a drop in the bucket, Councillor.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. And so I think going back to my first question is that when we get to debate and we really dissect this and ask, what is the main difference that a public inquiry will provide us at the end of the day that an audit won't? And if we believe those benefits outweigh, as we've just said, the time and cost, then I will be supportive of that inquiry, Rob. But I want to make sure I fully understand what else will we be getting? What else will the people of Ottawa be getting with a public inquiry that an audit won't be providing? And if that's sufficient and I'm satisfied, I will vote in favor.
Okay, so let's move along then. The police budget, the budget increase is proposed at 2.9%. You're well aware of the debate that's been happening in this community.
Yes.
There are many people in the community who would like that budget frozen or even cut, the so-called defund the police movement. So the police budget is up for discussion at a police board services meeting today. Delegates are allowed to have their say on the budget. You have signed up to be a delegate. What are you going to say today about the police budget?
Well, broadly speaking, I was surprised to see their budget tabled last week with a 2.9% increase. I was perhaps under the mistaken impression that they were trying their best to provide a zero-based budget, that they were going to control costs. I'm going to get into 3 main issues with them. I'm going to talk about their evolution, their service delivery evolution, and talk about the transition where they can start to incorporate more community and mental health supports in their service delivery. There needs to be a transition by some of the service that the police provides, and that's been a main request from the community. The second is the NRTs, the neighborhood response teams that have been launched within the last 2 years. I've been quite vocal. One of my main set of questions last year was looking at annual objectives. How are these NRTs assessed at the end of the year? How can there be greater councillor and community collaboration with these teams in identifying their annual work? And the number one priority in my Rob is, and across other wards, is speeding. And we've seen it further emphasized with COVID, the epidemic of speeding that we have in Ottawa. It is out of control. It is the number one safety issue, has been the number one safety issue ever since I started door knocking before I got elected. And it continues to be a major safety problem in the city. So up and above Project Noisemaker, these special teams that the chief created this year, how do we tackle this? How do we resource this moving forward? This can't just be sort of ad hoc special teams work.
Okay.
How do we use patrol officers? How do we, on a daily basis, attack speeding in the city? And in addition to police resources, is there anything the city can do as well? We've talked about red light cameras, the speeding cameras, traffic calming. Policing is very expensive. It's one piece of the solution, but speeding remains a major issue in this city.
Thank you, Councillor, for your time this morning.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate coming on.
Yep. City Councillor and Transit Commissioner Riley Brockington. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School at Carleton is right after the news on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, November 9th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees, Smith Falls 10. Here's what's making news this hour. Councillor Riley Brockington on the Rob Snow Show this morning says his latest incident involving two trains colliding in the maintenance yard, one being towed by the other, is just the latest front page news in the city. Brockington also says a judicial inquiry into LRT will be brought up again tomorrow. He wants to see the cost of that compared to the Auditor General, who's already been tasked with examining the whole system. He says he doesn't want to see an inquiry that would take years and cost $20 million, as some suggest. He says it depends on the time and the money for a judicial review, but he says if it is possible, it is something that he would consider. Removal of capacity limits and lowering temperatures with the season change means more people indoors and more COVID cases. One medical expert says that that may produce further restrictions in Ontario, but if we maintain social distancing and mask wearing rules, we should be able to curtail this rising trend. A couple of non-governmental organizations say not one of the 64 countries they examined rated a top 3 spot on their regular review of countries' efforts to combat climate change. Denmark came in 4th place, so first, once the first 3 are eliminated, for their ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That bumps Sweden off the number 4 post. As for Canada, how did we do? We ranked 3rd from the bottom. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
He is the poor professor from the Glebe, and because of the price of prime rib, which he enjoys on a weekly basis, he's poorer by the week. We're welcoming back Professor Ian Lee from Carleton University. Good morning.
And for the record, no, I don't eat prime rib. I can't afford it. I don't eat meat. I drink soy milk.
That's right.
That.
I know. Soy milk.
Okay.
Soy milk. Yeah. Yummy. Soy milk.
It is. It's very
yummy
tasty.
stuff.
And by the way, far fewer calories, too.
Sure.
And it's less expensive than milk.
Yeah, well. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's get in. We'll get into that stuff a little bit later. I want to start with the Air Canada CEO, Michael Rousseau. He admitted that he has lived in Montreal for 14 years, never learned to speak French. You know, the firestorm of criticism that he has faced. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland now says learning to speak French should be part of the performance review for this executive. There have been 1,000 complaints to the Commissioner of Official Languages, and he says he might investigate the matter, but the Prime Minister's weighed in on it. The Premier of Quebec. Air Canada is governed by the Official Languages Act. It must deliver services to the public in both official languages, but nothing says the CEO has to learn to speak French. So what should happen in this matter, in your opinion, Professor?
Let's put some facts on the table, something that's completely foreign and alien to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, sadly, as well as the Minister of the Premier of Quebec. Here are the facts. Air Canada is a publicly traded company on the stock exchange owned by investors, including pension funds across Canada, we the people. It's not owned by Justin Trudeau. It's not owned by Chrystia Freeland, not even as an agent. They're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So I said, well, how many other companies are listed on the stock exchange? Well, the Toronto Stock Exchange says over 1,500 corporations in Canada are listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Then I said, okay, well, how many corporations are there in Canada? So I looked that up from, oh my goodness, the government of Canada. There's over 1.5 million. Now, I'm trying to understand, those companies are not required for the CEO to speak French. Why on earth is the CEO of Air Canada? But let me go further.
Okay.
The job of the Air Canada CEO, or any CEO, as I've been teaching to my students for 30-odd years, the purpose of the firm is to create value. So if you're doing airlines, running an airline, your job is to make sure that you fly very safe planes and you fly on time, you don't lose my luggage, and you don't crash the plane and kill me. That's your job. That's your mission. Your mission. It's not to speak French.
And make money, do it all profitably, right?
So
do
sorry.
it all profitably, right?
I've been saying for 30 years, all of these left-wing people and accountants and professors, are wrong when they say the purpose of the firm is to make money. No, it is not.
No? Okay.
And very quickly, I can test this for those out there who think I'm being crazy. And I tell this to my students every year.
Okay.
When you go into Loblaws or Metro or Sobeys and someone comes up to you and says, can I help you? Do you say there, yes, I'm here to maximize the shareholder value of the Loblaws shareholders? Who talks like that? Loblaws exists to serve me fresh food, fruit,
profitably,
vegetables, meat, milk, bread.
Profitably.
If they do a good job in creating good value to me, the customer,
yes,
I will reward them with my business. Okay. And as an outcome, not the purpose of the firm, the outcome of the firm is their market share will go up, their profitability will go up.
Yes.
But that is not the purpose of the firm.
All right.
The purpose of the firm is to create value, not to speak French, not to speak Turkish or any other language. And so my point is that the minister, okay, I understand that Mr. Trudeau doesn't understand that. I mean, he was snowboarding and ski boarding or whatever he was doing for many years in his formative years.
All right.
But Chrystia Freeland doesn't have that excuse. She is the finance minister, and she was a journalist, a financial journalist with the Financial Times for many years.
Okay.
And she understands the purpose of firms.
Right.
And so I think it's embarrassing.
Let me ask you this. I don't disagree with just about anything that you've said so far. The history of the company, that it used to be a crown corporation, does that sway you at all in your thinking?
But I was hoping you were going to bring this up, and if you didn't, I was going to.
All right.
Our politicians, unfortunately, see crown corporations, and in this instance, a former crown corporation, as their political toy. Somehow it's their little toy that they can play with, and that's not the case. This is unfortunately, when a party stays in power too long, that they become arrogant, that they start to, adopt the Louis XIV, Louis XIV, l'état c'est moi, I am the state is me, and that belief that they are the national interest, and that gives them somehow the right to treat corporations that employ thousands and thousands of employees and service millions of Canadians to treat it as their private little toy. And it's not. And just because it was a crown corporation has no bearing on it. It was privatized. And so I hope that Air Canada Board of Directors starts to discuss moving the head office from Montreal to Toronto. They do less than 20% of their total business out of Montreal. Their core, to use the language of the great Michael Porter, the professor of strategy at Harvard Business School, is their core, their base, their home base is his phrase. Their home base is Toronto. That's where the biggest city in Canada.
Pearson. Yeah.
Pearson. And so they should move there. And because it twisted some people, and they got their knickers in a knot because he spoke before the Montreal Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
And so, listen, one way to deal with this is to recognize the reality that it is not a French company. It most certainly is not Bombardier. It's not Lavalin. It is a company that does most of its business out of Toronto and Central Canada, and so they should move the national headquarters of Air Canada from Montreal to Toronto. But one more quick point, Rob.
Sure.
What's really offensive about this is, remember, the Premier of Quebec is demanding that the right to speak English be abrogated in Quebec for federal public servants and people to work for federally regulated crown corporations or government corporations, including banks. And so what they're saying is you don't have the right to speak English. Okay, that's what they're saying. Well, don't turn around and demand bilingualism on the other side of the ledger, because there's an English company, overwhelmingly an English company, and the majority of their routes, all you have to do is look at the route pairs and where they fly to, and look at their passengers. The vast majority of their business is in English Canada and internationally. And so my point is that they're speaking with forked tongue by demanding that the Air Canada CEO be bilingual, while simultaneously saying you don't have the right to speak English in Quebec if the change goes through that is being demanded by the Premier of Quebec.
Okay, I want to talk and get your take, because this is something that you've raised on our radio show before, and there was a report recently about it in the Ottawa Citizen from John Willing, that the City of Ottawa is at risk of failing to collect millions of dollars from the federal government in what are called PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. Now, it's a $4 billion budget, and this is about $10 million or so. So it really is kind of it's a small percentage of the overall. I'm sorry.
The total PILT is $400 million.
Yeah. But at the loss in PILT right now is about $10 million, is what I'm saying in this budget, from what I've been told by a city councillor.
Right.
But nevertheless, explain what PILT is, why it even exists, and why it's something that taxpayers in Ottawa should be paying attention to.
We should be paying attention to it a lot. I just did research on this for a paper I wrote about 8 months ago, and it was in my op-ed in the Citizen. Under the Constitution Act of Canada, we used to be called the BNA Act, there's an actual section in there that says that no government can tax other levels of government. And so municipalities cannot impose municipal property taxes on the government of Canada. It's just absolutely illegal. So literally starting around, I think it was 1900 or 1905 or something, way back in the midst of time, before the First World War, the federal government realized that they were putting demands on municipalities, such as Halifax with ports, and then the rural Maritimes with all the ports. And so they developed this thing called PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. And they said, the government of the day said, we will compensate you wherever we have federal properties, federal only. So there's properties all across Canada, as you can imagine. Now, of course, the lion's share of properties are, guess where? That would be Ottawa, the capital city.
Yeah.
And so without getting deep in the weeds, they ended up agreeing to pay essentially the equivalent of the municipal taxes if they had to pay municipal taxes, in recognition of the fact that these buildings and these locations use provincial municipal services, police, fire, water, garbage collection, snow removal, etc., because they are consuming federal municipal services.
Sure.
So what the federal government is now doing, this is managed, I believe, by Public Works Canada, I think. It doesn't really matter which department administers it. And they're starting to now jigger the formula. I'm not sure how exactly they're doing, but at the margin it could lead, as you just said, a loss of $10 million. But for those who think that this whole debate of $400 million, of PILT is not that, it's kind of esoteric. It's about 10%. The totality of PILT paid annually, every year, from the government of Canada to the city of Ottawa is $400 million a year on a $4 billion budget.
Wow.
That's
10% of the budget. 10% of the budget. Yeah.
And why I've been critical of the council and the mayors when they are going off in their desire, because I guess they don't like being the mayor or councillor. They're wannabes. They want to be the Secretary General of the United Nations, or they want to be the Environment Minister. They want to go off and solve global warming, and I admire their dedication and their commitment. But then they should resign their jobs and go do what they really want to be. It's shades of that, that great famous Monty Python skit, I never wanted to be an accountant. I wanted to be a lumberjack. Well, they want to be environmentalists. Good. Fill your boots. Go do it. and let someone run the city that cares about the city, snow removal, potholes, all that stuff. And why I'm bringing all of this up and going down this road is that there is, behind the scenes, as we speak, the Government of Canada, the public servants doing this, Public Works, I guess, and Treasury Board, are working assiduously to downsize the federal presence in the city of Ottawa. And they're doing it by dumping leases as they come up for renewal, and they're looking at selling off buildings, and they're consolidating government services, and they're going to profoundly, over the next 5 years, reduce the federal footprint. Not only will that reduce millions and millions and millions of dollars in PILT being paid to the city, but it will reduce the economic value of those buildings in the downtown, which will in turn reduce the commercial tax rates paid by the private owners of buildings because it's based on market value property assessment. So, well, our councillors, like Nero, fiddled while Rome was on fire. So they're fiddling away trying to solve the problems of the world that they're not responsible for. Well, there's a fire burning underneath their feet in Ottawa, in our city, where the people behind the scenes are working night and day to reduce the federal footprint in Ottawa, which will lead to a reduction in the number of square footage or square meters, if you want, and the PILT is based on the number of square meters or square foot. So you reduce your federal presence by, e.g., 50%. Let's just make up a number.
Well, I think that the target that was mentioned yesterday by a commercial real estate broker that we had on the radio based on an event that he attended where the deputy minister in charge of this whole thing spoke was at least 30%, to begin 30%.
So if they reduce the federal footprint by 30%, just do the math, everybody listening. That's a third. What's a third of $400 million being paid annually to the city? Okay, that's over $100 million.
Yeah, 120, yeah.
$100 million. And so while they're talking about scooters and more bicycle paths and banning left turns or right turns, the city of Ottawa is facing an existential financial crisis, and those words have not crossed the lips of the mayor of Ottawa or Councillor Menard or any of our councillors, that we are facing this unbelievable apocalyptic financial crisis right now. And they're not even talking about it. They want to pretend that they're the national minister of the environment or the secretary general of the United Nations.
Maybe we should do, and we'll pick it up on the other side on this. Maybe we should tax the rich a little bit more. We'll talk about that when we come back. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. This is City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
We're back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. You know, there's a push on now to tax wealth, okay? Not income, but wealth, okay? The New Democrats want to tax wealth. There's a move afoot in the United States to potentially go after unrealized gains, so-called unrealized gains of billionaires in the United States. This is what prompted Elon Musk to do his tweet about his stock holdings. Now, Tesla founder Elon Musk's stock holdings are worth about $300 billion. $300 billion, okay? There was analysis, and we had the journalist on from ProPublica back in June. Elon Musk paid no income tax.
That's
Richest person in the world. No income tax in 2018 or in 2017. Okay? Oh, actually, in 2017, he did pay some. $65,000. Okay? Because he doesn't take a salary. So, in other words, he doesn't have an income. He says he's stock rich but cash poor. There's a profile of Taube Lutke in the paper, one of the wealthiest people in Canada, Shopify founder, $13 billion US. He owns millions of shares, of course, right? Because he's the founder of the company and stock options. He draws a salary of $1, right? So I can assume if he's drawing a salary of $1, I probably pay more income tax than him. And you do too, probably pay a lot more income tax than him, right? He gets his T4, it says, $1. $1. Jeff Bezos paid no income tax for 2 years, and in 1 year he actually received a tax refund because we tax income, not wealth.
That's right.
The New Democrats want to tax wealth in Canada. Should we tax wealth instead of income? What do you think about that?
I can't imagine a nuttier idea.
I knew you were going to say something like that.
Let's again, okay. I'm sorry, but when it comes to economics and business and taxation, every time I've spoken to somebody who's a self-declared NDP supporter, you quickly discover they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I'm sorry. I've got to be very honest here with people. They don't have a clue about wealth and income. They don't have a clue about accounting. And what they're talking about, first off, let's deal with the first, it's not dishonest because they're saying it out of ignorance.
Okay.
It's just ignorance that we don't tax wealth. We most certainly do tax wealth. We tax it all the time. It's called the capital gains tax.
Capital gains.
It is a tax on wealth, on wealth that is realized when you sell an asset. And it isn't just stock market. If anyone thinks it's the stock market, there's a capital gains tax on anything except your principal residence, and God knows how long that will last for. If you're a property flipper, you're flipping, buying and selling houses, you pay capital gains tax on that. And if you sell a business, you will, even if it's not on the stock exchange, you will pay a capital gains tax. You sell your farm for a huge amount of money. You sell art. If you bought art, Canadian Group of 7, and it went up in value, you have to pay capital gains tax. So let's deal with the just the sheer ignorance of those in the NDP who don't understand that there is a tax on wealth in Canada.
Okay.
And it's very significant tax on wealth in Canada.
Okay.
So now what they're talking about is taxing theoretical wealth. And I say theoretical because what goes up can go down.
Yes. Unrealized gains. Unrealized.
Yeah.
Unrealized is the key word.
And it's paper wealth. And I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, okay, for a whole bunch of reasons, but it has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Okay.
Whatever.
General Motors, and I've been using this example in my class for 30 years, from the 1920s to the early 70s, General Motors was the largest market value corporation on planet Earth, largest in the world. They actually traded places year by year between Exxon and GM. One year it was Exxon, the next year it would be GM, then the next year it would be GM. In other words, it was one of the two wealthiest, largest market caps on Earth, and the owners of the shares were unbelievably wealthy. And then over the next 30, 40 years, I'm talking starting in the mid-70s, their share price went down, 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 down. So by the time 2009, they went bankrupt, actually failed, and shareholders got wiped out. So this idea that you are going to be rich forever, or that you've earned that wealth because right now your shares are very high, is absolute nonsense. We know from the last 150 years, companies go up and they come back down. Today, this morning, General Electric, a company I've been trashing for 30 years in my strategy class because they were a diversified company, and I think that diversification is a terrible strategy. It destroys value. And for 30 years, General Electric were the darling of the stock market, and they were one of the largest companies in the world. And they're breaking up the company into 3 separate companies because they finally realize they're going nowhere. They've destroyed all kinds of value. The share price has collapsed. And so what goes up goes down. That's why we do not tax unrealized wealth. It's as idiotic for those who still don't understand. And by the way, I don't own any shares. For anybody who says, well, that's easy for you, you just don't want your shares taxed. First off, all shares are taxed when you sell them. Secondly, I don't own any. I don't have any stock wealth. I don't have any bonds. I don't have any. The only thing I own is my house. And so I'm talking about that kind of wealth, okay? But the idea of unrealized, it's as idiotic as saying, we're going to tax the ordinary taxpayers on their future theoretical income because let's say you've gone to university and you become an accountant or a doctor. We know that 5 or 10 years from now you're going to make a lot of money, so let's start taxing you today on what we think your income might be 10 years from now. You can't get into that idiotic. I mean, it's truly idiotic where you're talking about theoretical wealth or theoretical income that has not been realized.
They're not calling it theoretical. They're calling it unrealized.
Well, it's theoretical because what goes up can go down.
Yeah, okay.
You see, if they could give a guarantee, which they can't, if they could give a guarantee that that share price of that company will always remain where it is at this very moment, then there's a compelling argument. But they can do no such thing because shares go up and down all the time. They fluctuate. And this shows their failure to understand basic economics or accounting or logic when it comes to the market economy. And so I'm not saying that the capital gains tax shouldn't be higher. Maybe that's a good debate on realized capital gains when you sell your commercial building or you sell your farm or you sell whatever. But the point is you can't start taxing something that has not happened. That's what they're advocating. Let's tax something that didn't occur. Let's tax the farmer, the dairy farmer, because one day he might sell his house or his property. That's what they're talking about, taxing something where the gain has not been realized.
All right. Hey, great stuff this week. Really interesting conversation. Very important. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Talk next week. Bye-bye. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School at Carleton University. The Talk Back Hour comes up next. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, November 9th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 9 degrees, 10 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The issue of a judicial inquiry into the LRT in Ottawa comes up tomorrow. Council already voted to have the City Auditor General examine the entire LRT system. Councillor Riley Brockington tells the Rob Snow Show he wants to get to the bottom of LRT problems.
I'm not against getting into the weeds and trying to identify mistakes that have happened to ensure going forward that's corrected and to hold people accountable. But I don't want an inquiry that lasts for years and costs $20 million.
Now, Brockington adds he wants to fully understand the difference between the two inquiries, judicial and auditor general. If the judicial inquiry, he says, is a better way to get to the bottom of the LRT problems, then he tells the Rob Snow Show he would vote in favor. City News Time at 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Temperatures well above average for us today. The high 14 degrees. The average high is about 6. Clouds may dominate in most areas for most of the day. 3 degrees for the low. Some showers overnight. And then we'll clear out tomorrow. Mainly sunny for a good portion of the day. The high 11. For today, the high 14.
And right now, 9 degrees in Ottawa. It's 10 degrees in Smiths Falls. Just getting the latest COVID-19 numbers from the province with 441 new cases being reported today. Of those, 34 are in Ottawa, 5 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in either Renfrew or the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. There is also no need to panic. That is the word from experts who are keeping a close eye on these rising COVID-19 case numbers in the province in the last week or so. With the latest, here's Laura Carney.
The head of the province's science advisory table says Ontario is back in the fourth wave. The 7-day average for infections has risen to 476 from 362 a week ago. And Dr. Peter Uni says things began to shift in mid-October when the province started lifting capacity limits. He says people may also be taking fewer precautions in light of these changes and the high vaccination rate in the province. Uni says reintroducing capacity limits may help the situation, but says people can also help by avoiding large crowds, wearing masks indoors, and working from home if possible. A public health professor at the University of Toronto says the trend isn't too worrying yet, but does say people who aren't vaccinated should get their shots before gathering over the holidays. Laura Carney, City News.
City News Time at 10:03. Ottawa Police Service Board Finance and Audit Committee will hear thoughts on the 2022 police budget from members of the public starting at 1 o'clock this afternoon. With the details, here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
The proposed police budget will bring an increase of $14.1 million compared to the previous years, despite the service looking for ways to cut back on funding. Horizon Ottawa's Sam Hirsch is one of the delegates at today's meeting and tells City News what he would like to see from the budget.
This time around, I mean, we do want eventually the money to be reallocated to other services, but, this time around, there was a vote passed in July that makes it only possible to have a freeze or an increase, and obviously that's what we're asking for this time for the Ottawa Police Services Board to do what they promised.
Hirsch finds it shocking nearly $400 million is going towards police, while only $27 million is going towards social services. Councillors Riley Brockington and Sean Menard are also signed up as delegates for the meeting scheduled for 1 o'clock this afternoon. Alex Gouge, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should Aaron O'Toole be replaced as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? Or should he remain as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? Let's get some calls on this. Let's get your opinion. That's the opinion that matters. It's been 7 weeks since the federal election, and the Conservatives can't seem to get out from underneath this issue of mandatory vaccines for MPs. Now, the prevailing opinion after the election, immediately after the election, when I asked you this question again, it seemed to be, let's stick with Aaron O'Toole. Okay. Conservatives wanted to stick with Aaron O'Toole, the Conservatives I spoke with anyway. And the prevailing opinion was give the guy another chance. It was his first election campaign as leader. He can only learn from his mistakes and do better next time. The prevailing opinion, it seemed to me at the time, was he's moving the party in the right direction. He's moving the party where it needs to go if the Conservative Party of Canada ever hopes to form government again. So I would ask you now, 50 days later, do you still believe that? Or is it time for Aaron O'Toole to go as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada based on his post-election performance? Or are you still fine with him being the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? At 750-1310, 750-1310. I think this is kind of where we're at right now as we look on with a perverse fascination of what the Conservatives are doing to themselves. And I wanted to ask you this question because I couldn't help but think this morning as, again, I woke up to headline after headline about vaccine mandates for MPs. As though this is the be-all and end-all issue in the country. As though this is what Canadians care about for even 5 minutes. And the creation of the so-called mini caucus on civil liberties. David calls it the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom, they'll never take our freedom. Is like the Braveheart Caucus of Parliament Hill. I just can't help it. It has been like 7 weeks since the last federal election, and yet under the leadership of Aaron O'Toole, the leadership just can't seem to get past this singular issue. This issue, ladies and gentlemen. At 750-1310, 750-1310, when there are so many other issues that the party, I'm sure, would desperately like to focus its attention on. My opinion as someone who's a more right-of-center voter is that the party needs to move on with this, and if it needs a new leader, then maybe that's it. Because I am someone who has a lot of concerns about some of the decisions that are being made by the current Liberal government. And as you think about this issue, which just seems to be consuming the Conservative Party from the inside right now, and has since the election, and likely went a long way to costing the Conservative Party the election. Vaccine mandates for members of Parliament. I would also like you to think about this as well. 750-1310, 750-1310. Have the Conservatives done anything, said anything, accomplished anything that would make you think it is on the verge of winning an election? Yeah, the Conservatives. Sign me up for some of that. I suspect that if we went back in time 7 or 8 weeks ago, knowing what we know now, seeing this performance from this leadership team, I think the results for the Conservatives would be even worse. And I think if the election was held today, the outcome for the Conservative Party would be even worse. And the Liberals, under Mr. Trudeau, who have every intention of governing like they have a majority anyway, would likely win a majority from the voters. I think enough Canadians, just as an observer, okay? This is my own opinion. I'd love to know yours, 750-1310. I think enough Canadians, after witnessing this show that's been put on from these Tories over the last 7 weeks, they would say, well, as much as I have my own questions and as much as I have my own serious doubts about the Liberals, I can't bring myself to vote for the Conservatives. Look at them. Okay, look, I've been vaccinated. My parents and my grandparents have been vaccinated. Everyone tells me I should be vaccinated. My employer wants me to be vaccinated. I have to be vaccinated to go play bingo, for crying out loud. And yet there are enough members of the Conservative Party that don't think they should be vaccinated. I think that's a major turnoff for the vast majority of Canadian voters. And for that reason, I'm not even sure if this party is fit to govern right now. They can't seem to govern themselves. And sadly, I think that's where we are with this Conservative Party under this leader. So should this leader be replaced, or should he be allowed to remain in the job to fight another election? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Mr. O'Toole just met the media again. The vast majority of questions were, again, about this issue, including this killer one from David Aiken, the longtime parliamentary correspondent for Global News. Roll tape, David Smith.
Interestingly, there's another petition before Parliament sponsored by Ed Fast. And what does that conclude? Again, vaccine passports should be banned. Allison Fast, Leslyn Lewis tweeting against pediatric vaccines, Marilyn Gladew's comments, Michael Cram is writing op-eds out in Regina. The team is kind of getting away from the leader on vaccines. Many Conservatives might say, when will the leader start to crack some heads in his caucus and remind his caucus that vaccines are safe and that his caucus shouldn't be running around the country saying otherwise?
Vaccines are safe. You're right, David. And all of our MPs are talking about that responsibly. And where people have not, our caucus will be addressing.
Pause there. Press pause. Go back to where he starts answering David's question. Okay? But now roll tape there.
Vaccines are safe. You're right, David. And all of our MPs are talking about that responsibly. And where people have not.
No, they're not talking about it responsibly. Okay, keep going.
Have not, our caucus will be addressing that. We are addressing that. We all have a role to play. And we, as I've said, will also follow all of the public health guidelines with the return of Parliament. We have a leadership role as elected representatives in our community. As I've said, Mr. Trudeau's misleading approach, which I know people will be questioning, we will be questioning, what he committed to on vaccine mandates is not, we're just seeing with Correction Services Canada, not happening. So he's lied to Canadians again. We think to tackle vaccine hesitancy, you have to be straight, you have to take down the temperature, and our MPs have a role in that, and our caucus will be addressing that next week.
Okay. Are you confident in his leadership as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? Should he remain the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? Or at this point, after 50 days of this almost nonstop, should he be replaced as the Conservative Party of Canada leader? What's your opinion at 750-1310? Marie. Good morning, Marie.
Good morning, Rob. And as you know, a long-time Conservative here, and
yes,
always will be, I guess.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings about. I'm at the point where I think, do we give him another chance? We suffered greatly in the election campaign with some of the things that he did and said, and it's not stopping. I just listened again to the tape, and his caucus is not behind him. And he's got like as Brian Mulroney said a couple of weeks ago, which I wholeheartedly agree with 100%, he's got to be a leader, and right now he is not. Okay. Everything is going aside because he's going along with his caucus. What his caucus is doing is outrageous. Like here we are trying to get through this wave and get through this pandemic, and they're saying, well, I shouldn't do this, and we shouldn't have to do this vaccine, and the kids shouldn't. It's ridiculous. So I really, as a staunch Conservative, Rob, I don't know where to. I'd like to give him another chance, but I think it's way beyond that.
Oh, really?
I really
Okay.
do.
All right, Marie.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your call. That's where we are. Should Aaron O'Toole be replaced as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada or live to fight yet another day and potentially into the next election. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Aaron O'Toole asking about his future as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. It's been 50 days since the election. Should he be replaced or should he remain? As leader of the official opposition, 7 weeks since the election, and the Conservatives can't seem to get past the issue of mandatory vaccines for MPs when there are so many other issues that are of great importance to Canadians. Now, as I said, the popular opinion when I polled you on this after the election was, let's stick with Mr. O'Toole, give him another shot. He didn't do too bad. I think the party's going in the right direction. Do you still believe that after 7 weeks of this, or is it time for him to go as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? He's had his shot. His post-election performance has not been stellar. Or do you think this too shall pass and he should remain as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. This clip that David is going to play for us, once again, it's from David Aiken of Global News. This is from a news conference that just wrapped up with the Conservative leader, Mr. O'Toole. Let's listen to this here again.
Interestingly, there's another petition before Parliament sponsored by Ed Fast. And what does that conclude? Again, vaccine passports should be banned. Allison Fast, Leslyn Lewis tweeting against pediatric vaccines, Marilyn Gladew's comments, Michael Cram is writing op-eds out in Regina. The team is kind of getting away from the leader on vaccines. Many conservatives might say, when will the leader start to crack some heads in his caucus and remind his caucus that vaccines are safe and that his caucus shouldn't be running around the country saying otherwise?
Vaccines are safe. You're right, David. And all of our MPs are talking about that responsibly. And where people have not, our caucus will be addressing that. We are addressing that. We all have a role to play. And we, as I've said, will also follow all of the public health guidelines with the return of Parliament. We have a leadership role as elected representatives in our community. As I've said, Mr. Trudeau's misleading approach, which I know people will be questioning.
That's good, Jason. Thank you. Tough as nails question from David Aiken there. Jason in Barrhaven, you're on City News. Jason, good morning.
Good morning, Ron.
Should Mr. O'Toole be replaced, or would you let him stay as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada?
Well, I'm not too big a fan of O'Toole, but on this issue, I just want to say, Rob, okay, vaccines, I believe, are safe for the vast majority of people.
Right.
Now, this has affected my family personally.
Okay, I don't want to get into your family's personal
you
issues.
Want to get into my family? I want a family member that died after taking a vaccine, and I got to figure out what you call me.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I don't do this job to get yelled at. Okay. Thank you. Tim in Almont. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Yeah, I think O'Toole should be staying. He's done a very good job.
Okay. In what regard, sir, has he done a good job?
He's trying to bring the country back together, and he's not giving handouts to the media.
Okay, handouts to the media. Okay. Where's my handout, Tim? I haven't received a handout. I've been in the media a long time.
The Liberals have paid you guys for decades.
They have. Then why am I still...
That's why you're always bad-mouthing the Conservatives.
Oh, I see, Tim.
You never say anything bad about Trudeau.
I see. Tim, are you new around here, Tim? Tim's new around here, I think, folks. I think Tim's new around here. Logan in Smiths Falls. Logan.
Hey, how are you doing?
Well, I don't know. I guess for most people it's noon somewhere. So, Logan, go ahead.
So, Mr. O'Toole has been consistently getting caught either outright lying, he's being hypocritical or contradicting himself. And aside from a brief window during the election, he's pretty unpopular. So as an NDP voter, I think he should stay, honestly. I think he's the best thing for the NDP since the only thing I could think that would possibly be better is if Mr. 10,000 himself, old Dougie, became the leader of the Conservative Party.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, Doug Ford doesn't have much time for people who don't get vaccinated in his caucus. He kicks them right out, so...
That's true. It might be, we might have a little bit safer up in Parliament Hill, but honestly, I feel for the Conservatives a little bit, or for Conservative voters, because I understand, I understand being scared about the changing times. And you know what? Honestly, if you're more concerned about the economy than you are climate change, then I get it. I understand completely. But it's just, I don't know. It just seems that I don't think people are going to have short enough memories to really trust O'Toole for another term. That's
all right. Okay. All right. Look, I'm not privy to what's going on behind the scenes, right? And I have to be honest with you, if Erin O'Toole was to be replaced by, say, an interim leader until there was a leadership race, and then there was a new leader, I'm not entirely certain that the new leader would be a drastic improvement. My fear would be that the new leader of the Conservative Party might embrace even more of the anti-vaccine kind of faction of the party. Might even come from that faction of the party, which I think would render the Conservative Party of Canada all but unelectable in a general election in this country. That's how I view it. But I want to know how you view it. 750-1310, 750-1310. Replace or remain? I guess that's the question. Replace or remain? Ian in Brockville. Good morning, Ian.
Oh, the callback hour sure got vibrant since quarter after. Anyway,
What's that sentence you've used I wrote on my arm here? If the election was held today. Well, my fine feathered friend, once upon a time when the election first started, not too long ago, I do recall that same sentence being made on the Rob Snow Show many of times. And I also, to pay credit to you, remember you kind of happily admitting that, well, can't deny he's definitely turned his game around, per se.
Yeah, he did for about 2 weeks there. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And then
fair
the
enough.
old game showed up.
What's the other word I have written on my trusty forearm here? Grounded. Now, I don't disagree. That nice lady there, first caller in this morning. Marie. Good morning, Marie. Quite like what she had to say there. But, see, I guess at the end of the day, the difference for me, Rob, is that when Mr. Trudeau makes a silly decision, well, there's not a whole lot. Justin Trudeau and the word grounded are kind of oxymorons.
Right.
So when Mr. O'Toole, a man who's got a pretty good rapport, he's done some pretty neat things with his life. I mean, he doesn't show up to parties with funny bits of paint on his face, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I have a lot more patience and time for someone who is doing what Mr. O'Toole is doing. Now, I won't get into my exact.
So you would stick with him? You're going to stick with him?
I'm going to stick with him, Rob, because at the end of the day, he impressed me during the election, and as much as he's not being the smartest of guys right now, he pulled a fast one on us on the election, and, I mean, he's better than the guy running the country right now.
All right, Ian. Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. Be right back. Halftime. It's been an adventure so far, I'll give you that. This is the Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour on City News.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, November 9th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 12 degrees, Smith Falls 11. Here's what's making news this hour. Number of COVID tests coming back positive has taken a sharp upturn. Out of just under 19,400 tests done in the last 24 hours, 3.1% came back positive. That's up sharply from just last week when the rate was down to just over 1%. There are 441 new cases of COVID today in Ontario, 34 of them in Ottawa, 5 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in either the Eastern Ontario or Renfrew Health units. The province also reporting 3 additional deaths. A leading COVID-19 expert and advisor to the province says Ontario is back into its 4th wave. Dr. Peter Juni says the 7-day average for infections has risen to 476 from 362 just a week ago, marking the end of a lengthy plateau that began back in July. Councillor Riley Brockington says the idea of a full judicial inquiry into LRT is before Council again. Now, he voted in favour of the Auditor General examining that whole project, but he says he has an open mind. Brockington telling the Rob Snow Show he will listen to a full scope of both options. If the judicial is better, then he will vote in favour. The opposition federal Conservatives have released the shadow cabinet for the upcoming session of Parliament. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with who's in and who's out coming up at 11. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should Aaron O'Toole be replaced as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, or should he remain as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada? That's kind of where we're at this morning. It's been 50 days since the election. In some ways, I kind of feel like a political orphan right now. I look at the Conservative Party's performance of late and I think, do I see myself in this party? Does it promote policies that I support, that I can get behind? Oh, by the way, David, I love your new Maserati parked in the parking lot here. You're making good use of the Trudeau money, I see. Good for you, buddy. That's a beauty. Is that midnight blue? Is that like a special Italian midnight blue that they have?
That's a special order. They don't make those
gorgeous,
here.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, fully electric, too.
Oh, fully electric. Yeah, of course. I think it has to be. If you're in the media, in order to get the Trudeau money, you have to buy an electric car.
There's all those strings attached.
Yes, yeah. There's always strings attached with Trudeau money, okay? All right. I feel like a political orphan, okay? Can I get behind this Conservative Party? That's what I find myself asking. As just as a right of center guy, I see a party that's just mired in the muck, and has been since the conclusion of the election. And I expected better. I honestly expected better. I can't vote for the Liberals, okay? Especially not this Liberal Party. And I don't see a lot of daylight between the New Democrats and the Liberals these days. And I think if the reports are true that the Liberals and the New Democrats are working out the details of some kind of 3-year plan that would see the New Democrats prop up the Liberals, I would think that's a monumental mistake for the New Democrats. You're relegating yourself to irrelevance. Massive strategic mistake for you to climb into bed with the Liberals for the next 3 years. And political history would suggest that whatever concessions you manage to squeeze out of Mr. Trudeau on whatever, pharmacare, childcare, sick days, basic income, hair care, nail care, whatever it is you're working on, it won't be New Democrats getting the credit for it, despite whatever victory lap Mr. Singh plans to do fully clothed in the bathtub. It will be the Liberals that will get the credit for those measures. That's what always happens. I'm just not a lefty. My wife is a lefty. I'm not a lefty. Okay? I'm just a small C, small government, low tax, fiscal conservative who has no time for your culture war. And that's why I can't get behind, Mad Max and the PPC and Randy Hillier and whatever the suspender party he's going to have in Ontario. And I bet you there are a lot of people who feel exactly like me, who read the news and watch the news and listen to the news, and all they read is about conservatives and how they're handling this issue, and they must be thinking, those people are a joke. They're a farce. And they want to run the country? All very frustrating to me. It's like a wart that they just can't burn off. And that's the leader's responsibility, to burn those warts off. Kevin and Carp, what should happen to the leadership of Aaron O'Toole here, Kevin?
I think that they should burn the warts off too, Rob. But Aaron O'Toole, I'm indifferent. First, before I start, I just want you to know I'm fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I agree with vaccinations. I have no issue with vaccinations.
But I hear a but coming on.
Well, yeah, there is a bit of a but coming. But what's making me crazy or somewhat crazy. Now, I listen to you, Rob, off and on as much as I can during the week, but I have a job and I have to work, so I can't be in the truck all the time. Listen to you. However, last week you had people on about vaccinations and in healthcare system, and I was able to listen to some of it, and I think I got to about the halftime, and at that point it was 6-5.
Yeah.
People that would. What did it end up with?
It was like one vote separated. It was divided right down the middle. Yeah.
Right. So which leads me to my next point on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is that there's nobody out there in the media or anywhere speaks for the people that don't want to get a vaccination, and for whatever reason that may be, whether you and I think our families are all vaccinated, and I don't disagree with that. But who's out there speaking for the people that don't want to get this vaccination for whatever the reason is?
Well, I guess it's Max, it's it's Randy Hillier, it's these folks, right? Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but again, you don't hear much of it out there. Now, you just bear with me for a second.
Sure thing.
Go south of the border. There's a mad friggin', and I'm sure
That's
you
okay.
listen to it too. Like you have the people that don't want to get vaccinated, and there's a huge movement down there of people that's in their workforces and everything else. They're starting to have to relook at this vaccine mandate as well.
Yes,
in some respects.
Yep.
That's my point. Is that, and as far as Aaron O'Toole goes. I mean, I'm indifferent whether or not he hangs in or doesn't hang in or whatever. But you know what? Moral conversation. I understand your point 100%. You are definitely for the vaccinations.
Yes.
And that's fine. That's your opinion.
Yep.
But there's a lot of people out there that don't have that opinion, but not a lot of people out there addressing that in the media.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having your say, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Paul in Canada, you're on City News. Paul.
Yes, I want him gone.
You want him gone? Why is that?
People are saying to give him another chance. He had the chance yesterday, and he hasn't. And those people are still there today that are making these ill remarks.
Okay.
And he has not been able to handle it. He's been chastised by Mulroney.
Yes, he was.
Mulroney told him, get in there and get your hands dirty.
Show some leadership is what he said.
And if an election was to be held now, he would finish below Maxime Bernier's party. And if those people that are speaking out, like Gladys or Marilyn Gladu, let her join those parties. There's room for them. There's no room for those kind in a conservative party that I have voted and worked for. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your call. Yeah. I think Paul and I are of like mind here. Steve, Westboro. Steve.
Yes, I think Mr. O'Toole should do exactly what Brian Mulroney told him to do. Lift up his sleeves and get rid of the guys that don't want to get the vaccine to make his party look bad, right?
Right.
I don't trust Justin Trudeau no more.
Okay.
He's a liar.
Right.
He's bad to the indigenous people of our country. He's appealing the survivors to get money.
Yes. In the court case.
All going on with Justin Trudeau, which I like Justin Trudeau, and now I'm turning on him because of what he did to the indigenous people of our country on the Aboriginal Day. You know,
sure.
When he went out to Tofino, that was a complete smack in the face to every Native people in our country. I think Mr. O'Toole, if he does what Brian Mulroney said, I would like to see Mr. O'Toole get rid of the people that are in his caucus that won't get the shot, follow the guidelines of every health doctor in the country, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I think Mr. O'Toole, because he was in the armed forces, correct?
He was, yes.
My brother was in Kabul, Afghanistan.
Yep.
3.5 years and 2.5 years in Iraq.
Wow.
Fighting terrorism, right?
Yes, sir.
Now he's in Florida. But the point is this. is that Mr. O'Toole seems like a very good guy. He doesn't have all the garbage that comes with Justin Trudeau and SNC-Lavalin and the corruption there.
So your advice to him would be then kick these people out and get on with the business of running your party. Is that
That's right.
All right.
Kick them out, and go towards the First Nations and try to make amends with them.
Right.
And deal with the seniors problem with old.
Well, there are lots of issues that certainly need to be addressed. But unfortunately, Stephen, I thank you for your call. It's been 7 weeks of this issue, right? Marilyn Gladue, statement from MP Marilyn Gladue just released. Dateline Sarnia. I would like to apologize for my inappropriate comments about COVID-19 vaccines during a recent CTV interview. This was the question period interview. Upon reflection, I recognize how dangerous it is to share misinformation about the severity of COVID-19 and the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I retract these comments in full. Wow. I apologize unreservedly to Canadians. I also apologize to my caucus colleagues and leader for the distraction my comments have created. Vaccines are safe and effective, a safe and effective way to limit the spread of COVID-19 and prevent serious illness. I encourage every Canadian who is able to get vaccinated. When it comes to the safety of Canadians and efficacy of vaccines, it should be physicians and public health experts who advise Canadians, not politicians. Wow, so that's a pretty about-face statement for Marilyn Gladue. I was always, I was surprised by her performance on Question Period because I have interviewed her on this program a couple of times, and she's always come across as smart and impressive, which was not how she came across on the weekend on television. So we'll see what happens with that. Will people accept her apology? It's not known to happen very often in politics. Stan in the Glebe. Stan, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes.
And I'm surprised nobody has thrown out the name Leslyn Lewis.
Leslyn Lewis, yes.
As the next leader of the Conservative.
Well, is that what your preference is, sir?
That is my preference.
Really? Because she said some outlandish things about vaccinations as well.
Yes.
Speaking out against...
David made me aware of that, which I wasn't aware of it, but I still feel that...
she basically said, I don't want to put words in her mouth. David can find the quote for us, but she thinks... My takeaway from what she said was that she feels as though we're experimenting on kids when we vaccinate kids against COVID-19.
That's unfortunate.
I would say that's unfortunate. Yeah. Does that change your opinion at all, Stan? Or
not at all.
Not at all. Okay, interesting. Okay, what about but you want to see the backside of Aaron O'Toole? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, Stan. Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Yep. Let's get right back to it here. Bill in Ottawa. Bill.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, he has to go.
He has to go. Okay.
Yeah,
all
the
right.
Conservatives have to look at where is he leading them to now. He has no new ideas. He has no idea at all. And he was so vacuous when that reporter was pointing out to him examples of MPs who were doing the very thing that he says caucus will deal with. Well, clearly they're not.
They're not dealing with it, yeah.
And he's not.
When are you, David Aiken's point was, what was his exact term? When are you going to crack some skulls? I think is what he said, right?
He seems to have cracked his own, but he's clearly no idea where he wants to go with this, and he's going to lead the party to disaster at this rate.
Okay.
He already has. And so I think they have to look to better leadership.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bill. Yep. Good stuff. Be right back. Final quarter. It's flown by this morning. Holy cow. Talkback hour here on City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or, your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major, major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big, big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on our work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
On the leadership of Aaron O'Toole, should he stay? Should he go? Should he be replaced? Should he remain? As I contemplate this question this morning, and I bring it up because it's all happening on his watch. Where does the buck stop, right? With the leader. I do appreciate there's no guarantee that if the party did give Aaron O'Toole the boot and there was a leadership race, the next leader of the party would be any better, might be even worse for, say, centrist people, what I would call, moderates. Who, you never know. The next leader could come from this civil liberties caucus, this faction, right? And all the while, there's Mr. Trudeau, who won a minority with barely 32% of support in the election. And on Election Day was the least popular politician of all the leaders, according to the polls. He's just having the time of his life right now. It took him 7 weeks to meet his own caucus. That tells you all you need to know about the centralization of power around the PMO, that it would take basically 2 months for the Prime Minister to meet with the people who are willing to put their names on a ballot and say, I'm part of Team Trudeau. Well, it's not much of a team, is it? One-man team. He's kicked Mark Garneau to the curb. The guy was an astronaut, for crying out loud. On the day that happened with the cabinet shuffle, there was talk that he was going to be the next ambassador to France. Whatever happened to that? Nothing has ever come of that. His cabinet shuffle totally flipped the bird to Western Canada. in terms of representation and the message that it's sent to the West, putting Guilbeault and Wilkinson in environment and natural resources. Message delivered there to the West. You know what that message is. All the big gigs went to people from Toronto or Quebec. We haven't had a functioning parliament since the summer. The House is going to sit for 20 days, and it won't be back until the end of January of next year. And where is the official opposition? See, this is what has me so worked up this morning. Even more worked up than people yelling at me. You know, we have an official opposition. They're making themselves look like dinosaurs and fools just about every day. And the media is loving it. It's all they write about when they write about the Conservative Party. It's just like an entire political movement is spinning its tires in the muck and quickly going nowhere. Very frustrating. Very frustrating. Dave in Lowertown. Dave, good morning.
Hi. Unfortunately, I think that is probably the time for O'Toole to bid us adieu.
Okay.
He's just not leading. There is no leadership. Remember when Trudeau, during the summit, was indicating that he wants to put a cap on emissions?
Yes.
For the oil sands?
For the oil sands, yeah. For oil and gas. For oil and gas. Yeah, for oil and gas.
Yeah, there wasn't a peep of him to support the West.
No.
And but by the same token, it's like one thing that you were speaking about, not having Parliament in session, does not help him either.
No, that doesn't help. No.
But and also, who do you replace him with?
Well, see, it could be a case of be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah. And I think it's, if Pierre Poilievre had done the nice thing and agreed to be leader of the Conservative Party, we may not be any of this mess right now.
Okay.
That's hindsight's 2020.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, who knows what's going on behind the scenes and, what Mr. Poilievre is up to. But I know what you're saying. It feels leaderless right now. It feels leaderless right now for that party. Phil in Orleans. Phil.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, buddy,
Oh, it's almost Friday.
A little black and blue today. Yeah.
Okay, Aaron O'Toole. I think he has to be more forceful and come out with that in the media.
Okay.
He's sort of hanging back and I guess waiting for other people to say what he might want to say. You know what I mean?
You want a little more passion, a little more fire in the belly.
More
toughness. For example, Mr. Mulrooney, not that I was ever a big fan of his, but Mr. Mulrooney says, you got to show some leadership, right?
Well, when he had to show leadership, he did.
Yeah. Well, I guess, but nevertheless, where's the leadership on this particular issue with vaccine mandates for members of Parliament?
Well, I'm hoping that Aaron comes around. I've voted Conservative all my life.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Yep.
And I hope that he comes around. And the other thing I wanted to say regarding the shot, I think it's Thailand or one other country. I'm not sure if it's Thailand or Korea or something. But they've come out with, if you come into the hospital with COVID and you haven't had a shot, you're paying for it yourself.
You're paying for your health care yourself. Yeah, okay, all right.
I think that's going to spread across the world fast, because I heard it today, just a little blurb, but...
Okay. I haven't heard that, but I appreciate. I want to take Helen's call because Helen has called, and whenever Aaron O'Toole, the question of Aaron O'Toole's leadership is, she always calls because even back during the leadership race, Helen, you called and you were a big Aaron O'Toole supporter, right?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of your guy's performance here?
Well, it's hard to tell about his performance because Parliament hasn't met, and it's hard to judge the quarterback when the game isn't on. So when Parliament gets back in session, we'll see what Aaron does. And I think having an apology, the type of apology that Ms. Gladue offered today, I think that's a sign of things to come. So, I mean, you
think they are starting to crack some skulls around there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Helen. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Yeah. Dave in Ottawa. David.
Yeah, thank you.
David.
I think we just should give
O'Toole an opportunity to get his house in order and quickly, and if not, then have a review of his leadership. It's good to hear Gladew's apology today, but I'd only believe that if she follows it up by action and gets herself separated from this libertarian wing of the party and this sub-caucus that she seems to be almost a leader of.
Okay.
If she doesn't extract herself from that, then her apology means nothing.
All right. Okay, David. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. David tells me it's Singapore is the country that the caller was referencing. Singapore will no longer offer free health care for unvaccinated COVID patients. With the government calling it you're unvaccinated by choice. You are unvaccinated by choice. You'll have to pay for your health care in Singapore. Joe in Nepean. Joe, good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Hanging in there, buddy. Yep.
I agree with your last caller. A couple callers ago, he mentioned Pierre Poilievre's name.
Okay.
And I don't know why he isn't being talked about more. I mean, you gotta send someone to the House of Commons that wears pants and not a dress.
Okay, all right. Well,
I remember him questioning Pierre Trudeau, and he had no fear at all.
Well, yeah, Justin Trudeau, yeah.
But that's what you need. You need a bulldog to run the party. Someone who's going to do like what Mulroney said.
Right.
Put your foot down with your guys.
Show some leadership.
Exactly.
Show some leadership. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, you. Rob. Yep. That's it. I don't know about the dress comment, but I guess what can you say about that? Speaking of, coming up at 11:15, I'm really looking forward to this. There's a new book. It's kind of the season of political books, as you can imagine. Holiday shopping season, Christmas shopping season will soon be on, and we'll be inundated with political books. It's a great one. It's the official biography of Flora MacDonald, the former Progressive Conservative cabinet minister, Canada's first female foreign affairs minister. Flora MacDonald is from my hometown, or I should say I'm from her hometown, North Sydney, Nova Scotia. A remarkable life, a remarkable career, and a remarkable story about a remarkable woman. And it's called Flora, A Woman in a Man's World. And we're going to interview her biographer, Geoffrey Stevens, former managing editor of the Globe and Mail and Maclean's magazine, coming up in just about 15 minutes from now, here on City News.
101 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, November 9th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 12 degrees, 11 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole has named his shadow cabinet with 2 weeks to go now before the return of Parliament. He shut out some former leadership contenders who have been making controversial comments. With the rundown, here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
The Conservative inner circle looks a lot like the old one. However, there have been some changes in portfolios. Popular MP Pierre Poilievre has returned to the finance file, while Deputy Leader Candice Bergen remains in place. Dan Albus goes to Environment, and Michelle Rempel is at Natural Resources. But the bigger story is who didn't make the cut. Some people left out include former leadership candidates Marilyn Gladu and Leslyn Lewis, along with MP Dean Allison, all who have made comments or promoted voices questioning the safety of vaccines or public health measures. They're not the only ones in the Conservative Party who have done that, and leader Erin O'Toole was questioned why so many of his MPs are off base with their leader on COVID vaccines.
Vaccines are safe, and all of our MPs are talking about that responsibly, and where people have not, our caucus will be addressing that. We are addressing that. We all have a role to play.
The House of Commons has a mandatory vaccination rule for anyone entering the House of Commons precinct. Parliament returns November 22nd. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time, 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Temperatures well above average for us today. The high 14 degrees, the average high is about 6. Clouds may dominate in most areas for most of the day. 3 degrees for the low, some showers overnight, and then we'll clear out tomorrow. Mainly sunny for a good portion of the day. The high 11. For today, the high 14.
And right now, 12 degrees in Ottawa. It's 11 in Smiths Falls. A police committee will examine the proposed budget for the coming year from the public perspective today. Finance and Audit Committee of that department will hear from delegations on the budget, which proposes $14.1 million more than last year. The meeting is scheduled to start at 1 o'clock this afternoon. City Council is scheduled to vote on the entire city budget on December 8th. The idea of a judicial inquiry into the LRT will be in front of City Council again tomorrow. River Ward Councillor Riley Brockington says cost of that compared to the already approved Auditor General report is among his concerns. Here's City News reporter Perushka Gobalkista.
Ahead of Wednesday's council meeting, Councillor Brockington says that if an inquiry were to be voted on, he is not sure what difference it would make compared to the audit that was also voted on. Brockington explains what he will be looking for at Wednesday's council meeting.
I want to ask questions about what will be the added benefit of having an inquiry compared to the audit that council's already agreed to.
Councillor Brockington says that despite the recent LRT collision earlier this week, he is hopeful that at least partial service could return by the end of the week. Perushka Gopal-Kista, City News.
City News time, 11:03. The number of COVID tests coming back positive has taken a sharp upturn in the province. Out of just under 19,400 tests completed, 3.1% came back positive. Last week, it was closer to 1% positive rate. There are 441 new cases of COVID-19 today across Ontario. 34 of the cases, according to the province, are in Ottawa. 5 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in either Eastern Ontario or the Renfrew Health Unit. The province is also reporting an additional 3 deaths from COVID-19. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Great to have Michael Taube back with us here on the Rob Snow Show. Read him at Troy Media, read him at Loonie Politics, in the National Post, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you, Rob?
Oh, I'm great. So let's get to the new news, the newest news. Okay. So Erin O'Toole just had another news conference this morning. And again, lots of questions about vaccine mandates for MPs. I think this is kind of the highlight, the takeaway exchange from his most recent news conference when he takes this question from David Aiken from Global News.
Interestingly, there's another petition before Parliament sponsored by Ed Fast. And what does that conclude?
Again, vaccine passports should be banned. Allison Fast, Leslyn Lewis tweeting against pediatric vaccines, Marilyn Gladew's comments, Michael Cram is writing op-eds out in Regina. The team is kind of getting away from the leader on vaccines. Many conservatives might say, when will the leader start to crack some heads in his caucus and remind his caucus that vaccines are safe and that his caucus shouldn't be running around the country saying otherwise?
Okay, so while I'm sorry, we should listen to the answer, I suppose, right? A little bit of the answer. Go ahead.
Vaccines are safe. You're right, David. And all of our MPs are talking about that responsibly. And where people have not, our caucus will be addressing that. We are addressing that. We all have a role.
We're addressing it. We're addressing it. Okay, that's good. We're addressing it. We're addressing it. So, moments later, comes a statement from Member of Parliament Marilyn Gladue after her performance on CTV's Question Period this weekend. Quote, I would like to apologize for my inappropriate comments about COVID-19 vaccines during a recent CTV interview. I recognize how dangerous it is to share misinformation, her word, misinformation, about the severity of COVID-19, the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I retract these comments in full. Apologize to the caucus leader, yada, yada, yada. I'm sorry. What do you think about Mr. O'Toole's handling of this entire vaccine mandate for MPs issue over the last 7 weeks or so?
Well, I mean, I think we can certainly say with Ms. Gladue's statement today that David Aiken's line of cracking heads is beginning. It just isn't coming out as forcefully as some people would necessarily want. Look, you and I talked about this, and over the past few weeks, I've said, and I said to you and I said to others, and I'm sure other guests you've had have said similar things, conservatives by nature believe in free debate, free discourse, intellectual discourse, and difference of ideas and opinions, and fighting them out as we speak. We don't believe in, shutting people down, refusing to hear other sides of it, even if there are issues and ideas that we don't necessarily agree with, Rob. And this is sort of what's happening here. Now, look, the Civil Liberties Caucus, which I'll give them credit for one thing. It's a good name because if Aaron O'Toole publicly goes against them, they can just point to the name of their caucus and say, look what you're doing. You're opposing us.
You're against civil liberties.
Exactly. Well, it's better than a Democratic representative caucus, so I'll take it.
Okay.
Look at your history books, kids, for that one.
Okay.
But look, let's be fair about it. It's a difficult, I know you're going to laugh, but it's a difficult issue for a conservative leader to face and deal with because we believe in so much free discourse. Now, in fairness, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has done the opposite. He basically put everybody in line for the most part, and with the only exception of a couple of MPPs, everyone, we believe, as of now, is fully vaccinated and set, and the issue, while it hasn't disappeared because we're dealing with COVID-19, it's no longer an issue within the caucus. It's harder federally because there's a lot more provinces, a lot more people, a lot more opinions, and a lot more voters from across, coast to coast to coast that think different things on this issue. Now, again, I'm fully vaccinated. I have been fully vaccinated for quite a while. Most conservatives are fully vaccinated. The Conservative Party and its leader, Aaron O'Toole, believes in vaccinations and believes people should be fully vaccinated. They just don't like to, as conservatives today don't like to do. They don't like to push buttons. They don't like to tell people, order them, like left-wing parties, like the Liberals and NDP often like to do, to keep their parties in line. However, based on Ms. Gladue's statement, to come back to that, I think this may be an early sign, Rob, that the Conservative Party, Mr. O'Toole, his senior advisors, are getting tired of being in the news and getting these headlines the past few weeks, which, as you said, it's almost been 2 months. This may be an early sign that things are about to change, whereas O'Toole may not come out forcefully and say that everyone must be fully vaccinated or else. This could be an early sign that everybody else who's fighting it, you can still argue it, you can still defend it, you still have the right to believe it, but you're not going to oversee or overarch the Conservative Party and its leader when it comes to this issue, such as being COVID-19 and vaccines.
Okay, let's move along to the other side of the political spectrum. The New Democrats and the Liberals reportedly working on some sort of arrangement that would see the NDP prop up the Liberals for the next 3 years. I think it would be a bad move for the NDP, but what do you think?
I'm with you. Unbelievably stupid. I don't mind saying it that way. I really don't. I'm usually pretty measured with my words, but that's just dumb. You don't want to keep a Liberal government in place that has been struggling along the past few elections. The last two elections, 2019 and 2021, Mr. Trudeau, yes, he won both elections, but in terms of the popular vote, he's finished in second place with the Conservatives both times. Yes, the margins were small, but when you're governing right now with a margin of, I believe it's, if I'm not mistaken, Rob, 32.6% or thereabouts of the popular vote, you only have a third of the country supporting you. And sure, there are other left-wing parties, the NDP, the Greens, the Bloc, etc., and they take up large chunks. There's not a lot of people who right now have an enormous amount of support or really support the ideas of Justin Trudeau. And even amongst the people who voted for him, you wonder how much confidence they currently have in him. So why would the NDP, who's been struggling along, apparently they have a war chest which is almost at zero from what I gather privately, and have struggled for attention, for support, and even though Jagmeet Singh personally as a leader is popular, his party is not, which has always been a historical problem for the NDP, you wouldn't want to prop up a Liberal government that has struggled so much the past few years. If anything, you have a working arrangement with them to keep Parliament operating maybe for a year, year and a half, which is typically as long as minority parliaments last in this country. Then you work to bring them down. Don't prop them up for 3 years. It emboldens Trudeau, it emboldens the Liberals, and gives them the chance to recover, get stronger, maybe find a replacement for Trudeau at some point, and become even stronger at that point. That would be just a bad move.
All right. Turning our attention to Ontario affairs.
Yep.
This is Randy Hillier, independent MPP from the Lanark Highlands area. Roll tape.
This is a cultural war, and how we win cultural wars is also at the ballot box. So join with me. Sign up the Ontario First Party paperwork. PPC Ontario and the Purple Wave is here, and it will be on the ballot box, and I'll be leading them for the June election in 2020.
Okay, all right. The Ontario First Party, Premier Suspenders. Hillier says he's... sorry, I've been using that all morning. He's starting his own PPC-inspired political party. But seriously, could it siphon off enough support from the PCs that it could actually hurt Doug Ford's chances in the next election? I guess that's one of the questions.
No, it's a fair question. The answer is no. I mean, I think for Randy Hillier, it may be a chance for him to save his political seat and his political hide. So I understand why he's doing it. You know, as an independent MPP, no matter what you think of Hillier, whether you like him or dislike him, it's a hard road to hoe. It's very difficult to get attention, money, anything. So he's trying to make himself in a different fashion to sort of link to the PPC, which federally got a little under 5% of the popular vote, didn't win any seats, but there's obviously a margin of support there, and it's possibly a margin of error, excuse me, that will help Hillier in his quest to hold on to a seat. But leading another little small right-leaning party, because there are a bunch of them already in Ontario, I think the Ontario First Party will be the fourth one to come about in the last little while. You know, there's the new Blue Ontario Party. There's a few of them here and there. In the end, ultimately, Hillier will get a little bit more press. He'll get a little bit more media. He'll try to find some people to run under his banner. I'm sure he'll get a few here and there because he's certainly high profile enough. But in the end, is it going to take away enormous amounts of support from Doug Ford? No. And are any of these other small right-leaning parties going to do so? Absolutely not.
Okay. Do you care if the CEO of Air Canada speaks French?
It's a role that I guess, bilingualism is not something I normally think about or talk about too much, but I think that in the Air Canada CEO, it probably would be better if they spoke French, just because obviously Air Canada runs throughout our country, so I think it's logical. Do I think it's necessary? No, I don't. But I
mandatory. Like,
but I don't know if it should be mandatory and something like that. It's one thing to say that a federal bureaucrat should be bilingual. That I do understand. Air Canada CEO, Air Canada is a private company. They can make their own decisions that way. I mean, again, I think it's a desirable quality. If they're looking for a prime candidate, I think it makes sense to advertise that way. But do they have to? Does it have to be mandatory? Not necessarily.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Have a great week.
You too. Take
we'll
care.
talk soon. Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and former speechwriter for Stephen Harper, 11:15. We'll be right back with Geoffrey Stevens, the biographer for the great Flora McDonald, coming up. City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly, but it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food, so nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm, so supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and have the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have from combos and to small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
Icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
In the before times, I was on vacation one summer on Cape Breton Island, and I was in my hometown of North Sydney, and they have a small library there on the main street, and inside that library that summer was an exhibit, and it was all about the life and career of Flora McDonald. Flora McDonald was from North Sydney, Nova Scotia. North Sydney, Nova Scotia is famous in part because it is where you get the boat to go to Newfoundland. And Flora was a trailblazer for women in politics, yes, but for all Canadian women. No question about it. She became Canada's first female foreign affairs minister, ran for the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, and her life and political career is now the subject of an official biography called Flora, A Woman in a Man's World, by Flora McDonald and our next guest, author and columnist, former managing editor of the Globe and Mail and Maclean's, Geoffrey Stevens. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Really nice to hear from you. I showed the cover of the book to a few people in our newsroom. It's really amazing. 1979, and this is the official picture of the cabinet. Right. Who of note is in this picture?
Well, the very front row is Flora MacDonald in a white dress.
Yes.
Surrounded by about 30 men in dark suits, which makes the point that she was the only woman in that cabinet.
Yeah.
In 1979. She was also, when she was elected in 1972, the only woman in a caucus with 101 men. So very much on her own. You said a trailblazer, and I think that's right. And that really goes back to her days in Cape Breton. I must say this book has generated a lot of interest in Cape Breton. I've had several calls from various media there that everybody wants to sort of acknowledge Flora as their native daughter.
Yes. So you have Joe Clark, youngest prime minister. You have Lincoln Alexander in this picture.
Yes, that's right. Lincoln Alexander in the back row, and Joe Clark is the youngest prime minister in Canadian history.
And Flora. And other than that, it is very male and very white, right?
Very male and very white, exactly.
Yep. So tell me about her upbringing, given she was from North Sydney. I don't imagine it was filled with affluence. What was her upbringing like?
Well, they said they were middle class.
Okay.
She said they always had enough to eat, but not much to spare. She was one of five children. Her father had been a telegrapher with Western Union. But in later years, he was laid off from Western Union, and he did enough work as an accountant to get by. But they had no money to spare. They could not afford to send any of their daughters, 4 daughters, to university. That was fairly common in those days, though, where particularly in the areas where there wasn't a whole lot of money, that if families did have any money, they would send their sons to university, and they would assume that the daughters would either get married or would go off and become either a stenographer or a nurse or a teacher. But that was not in Flora's plan.
Right. She says in the book, I wanted to go to university, but I knew it wasn't in the cards.
That's right.
She went to secretarial school.
Yeah, she went to secretarial school, and some of her sisters went off and then became nurses. And that was what they did. And I think she always regretted that she didn't get to university, but she didn't resent it. That was the way it was, and she basically made use of what she had, which was a good mind and a lot of energy and some ambition, and she built herself a career starting with secretarial school.
So how does she get drawn into politics? Where does that come from?
That really starts with her father, who was a staunch conservative, and would take her to conservative meetings in North Sydney and around Cape Breton generally to hear speakers. And she saw various prime ministers and provincial conservative leaders. And then Robert Stanfield came along and got elected as provincial leader. And she and her father were walking on the streets in North Sydney one day, and they bumped into Bob Stanfield and started talking to him. And her father was in some despair of Stanfield as being sort of an awkward and fairly shy, inarticulate fellow. But Flora was quite drawn to him and saw some potential there. And she started working in local conservative campaigns and got more involved. Stanfield would come to Cape Breton, and eventually she ended up working with him.
She stresses she was a moderate. She was in progressive conservative politics through family history, I guess, because her father was involved there, as opposed to the Liberal Party. But she was a moderate, right?
She was a red Tory.
Red Tory.
Red Tory from the get-go. Now Stanfield was, you could probably call Stanfield a red Tory. He was more conservative on fiscal matters probably than she was, but he was very much a progressive on social issues like women's rights, abolition of capital punishment, many of those gay rights, all those sorts of things, and Flora was very much in the same philosophical bent as were most of the people that she got involved with in the Conservative Party and through her leadership campaign. I mean, she was deemed to be a bit of the radical when she ran for the leadership, because she was certainly further left than most of the Conservatives at that time.
A significant part of this book deals with her experiences during the Diefenbaker years. How would you describe the nature of her relationship with the chief?
Well, it was awkward, and then became graduated to impossible. Flora at that time was effectively running Conservative headquarters in Ottawa. She'd been there 9 years, and she was calling the shots. There was a succession of national directors to whom she reported, but they were more figureheads than anything else, and quite often they didn't even show up at headquarters. But she was never given a chance to become the national director. Position became available twice, and both times she was passed over, and she was told, "This is a man's work. This is not for a woman. Too bad." And then both, she took it very badly, and ultimately she became increasingly disenchanted with Diefenbaker's leadership, particularly after his 1958 huge majority government, where he became sort of distance from the people. He didn't want to talk. He'd walk on the streets, and people he used to talk to, he wouldn't talk to anymore. And told people, if I talk to them, I've got to talk to everybody. I'm Prime Minister. I can't do that. He became more remote, more autocratic. The caucus got very difficult with him. A lot of members in the caucus felt that it was time for a change, and Flora tended to align more and more with those people. And Diefenbaker knew that. And so once he got an opportunity, he ordered his latest national director, Jim Johnson, to get rid of her, and who was basically saying, "What are we going to do with that troublesome girl at headquarters?" Jim Johnson took the hint and went down and fired her, and that got her involved with Dalton Camp and the others in the movement to remove Diefenbaker and force a leadership convention, which they did, and then they elected her choice and Camp's choice, which was Bob Stanfield, and it went from there.
Our time is tight. I do encourage people to read the book and learn about her time in Kingston and her work on behalf of the inmates at the prison for women there, her role in the resettlement of the boat people. I do want to ask you a couple of quick political questions, though. In reading through the book, it's I never trusted Brian Mulroney. She says, I never trusted Brian Mulroney. Where did that come from?
Well, Flora knew him very well.
For a long time, yeah.
A long time, and they worked together in various campaigns.
This is going back to 1960.
It does, but basically the problem came in 1976 when she was running for the leadership, and so was Brian Mulroney. Flora had no money to run the campaign. She had a campaign called $1 for Flora, and people sent her in a dollar bill and that sort of thing. And it was very much a shoestring operation. Brian Mulroney ran a well-financed campaign. At that time, he was a lawyer in Montreal. He had great friends of the Power Corporation. Power Corporation lent him a jet to fly across the country. He spent $10,000 to hire a singer at the convention to entertain delegates. Flora didn't have any money for that sort of stuff. And Brian refused to disclose his expenses. Everybody else did, and he wouldn't do that. And she just didn't like his style. She felt that there was something he wasn't. She just didn't trust him, and that feeling grew over the years. And she worked with him. She worked with him quite well in the cabinet on most issues, but they did have some problems there. And she, in the end, she lost her seat in 1988, and. Just about every other cabinet minister who lost their seat got something, a reward of some sort. Ray Natishan lost his seat. He'd been a cabinet minister. He lost his seat in Saskatoon. He was made governor general. There were others who were made ambassadors, and some went to the Senate. Flora, as she said, asked nothing and got nothing, and Brian didn't do anything for her. And that was the bad blood that went back to that leadership convention, if not before. So she was on the outs with Mulroney, but she made it work as long as she could.
It's a real trip through Canadian political history. It's a tremendous read. I encourage my listeners to give it some thought if they're into political books this season. Thank you, Geoffrey Stevens, for a preview this morning. Great to hear from you.
Thank you, Rob, very much.
Yeah, bye-bye. Geoffrey Stevens, the biography of Flora MacDonald. It's called Flora, A Woman in a Man's World. This is City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 9th of November. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 13 degrees. It's 13 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa's police budget is up for discussion this afternoon. It contains a 3% funding increase, or about $14 million more for next year. Delegates who had hoped to see a budget freeze, if not a reduction, are signed up to vent their disappointment and frustration at the Police Services Board meeting starting at 1 this afternoon. Tomorrow, Ottawa City Council will debate whether to hold a judicial inquiry into the LRT problems. Council's already approved the mayor's preferred plan to have the Auditor General take a look. Supporters feel a judicial inquiry would be a much more thorough effort at rooting out the problems. The latest O-train problem, one train being towed in the maintenance yard crashed into the train that was doing the towing. It happened yesterday morning. Both trains sustained broken windshield glass, wipers, and exterior panels. No one was hurt. The Transportation Safety Board has already been inspected and concluded its assessment.
City News traffic alert.
The westbound 417 on-ramp from Hunt Club Road to the westbound 417 is closed because of an accident involving a tractor-trailer. Fortunately, no one was injured, but OPP say the on-ramp from Hunt Club to the westbound 417 is expected to be closed for several hours for the cleanup. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
All right, it's time for Ontario politics this week. We're doing it a couple of days early because we have special Remembrance Day programming for you coming up on Thursday, which is normally when we would look back at all the shenanigans that are happening at Queen's Park. But I'm always down for speaking with Lindsay Maskell. Lindsay is a Liberal strategist and former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Good morning and welcome back.
Thanks, Rob.
It's great to hear from you. And Andrew Brander is back with us as well. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey there, Rob.
And Andrew is a former advisor to the Ford government and is a senior consultant with Crestview Strategy. So let's get into it. Subways. You know, the Ford brothers love subways as opposed to surface light rail. Gee, I wonder why. But we've gone from subways to now highways. And clearly this is a major file for the Ford government in its re-election agenda. 2 projects. One is the Bradford bypass, which I want to talk about. But first I want to talk about Highway 413. So, Lindsay, let's start with you. Explain it to the list. What is Highway 413? Why does it matter? Why all the fuss?
It is definitely a bit of a political firestorm in the sense that the Ford government is proposing a highway that would go from Vaughan sort of into the far outreaches of the 905 headed west, so out past Mississauga, which was basically would take you through a highway through a lot of green space. Okay. So all of that farmland off of the other highway out there. And it's pretty controversial, especially just an interesting look at the alignment, of course, is none of the mayors of the region and municipalities that it would cut through support the project. But of course, those local elected MPPs know that the thing that keeps you from your time between work and your family is the thing that annoys you, and it's usually something the government runs, whether it's transit or a highway. These things are important to voters. But there is also, alternatives such as the commitment to all-day two-way go and other transit improvements and other options, especially in the world of not too many people are touting big highway projects in a world of trying to help fight climate change. So it's another super highway that we don't need in the 905.
Another super highway that we don't need. Well, Doug Ford disagrees with Lindsay, but does he agree with Andrew Brander? Andrew, Highway 413, what do you think?
I agree with Lindsay. It is a super highway.
And you mean super as it's super.
Terrific.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Look, I think it's interesting that Lindsay points out the two-way all-day go service, which certainly is something that this government has been looking very closly at as well. Okay. In addition to further infrastructure, you'll recall the Liberals under a previous Minister Del Duca actually promised to restore that or to increase service to two-way.
He was transport minister. He was transport minister. Yeah.
So they didn't get it done. But in that vein, I think this government has always been big on transportation and infrastructure projects on the agenda. Obviously, haven't gotten to them for the last few years. The mandate's been a little bit distracted with the pandemic, but I think as people see the return back to the office from the pandemic after spending so much time at home, they realize even more how frustrated they are at the idea of spending time sitting in their cars or commuting. So I think this is certainly part of a package. Of increasing transit as well as building alternative routes. And the reason why they're obviously doing this now is these types of projects, much like an LRT project, take a lot of time. Shovels in the ground today don't actually mean.
The
project
going to take a long time.
It's going to take a long time.
Yep.
So it is expropriating a lot of land.
Okay.
Just to be clear, this highway would also take a very long time.
Sure. But is it needed? I guess that's the question. Not being familiar with the area, I don't spend a lot of time, say, north of Brampton, for example, right? So it runs from, I was looking at the map this morning, from like even a little bit north of Vaughan, which is already like the northern GTA, Stephen Del Duca territory. Then it goes west, and it's also known as GTA West, and it seems to end like Halton Hills, kind of like north of Mississauga, right? Mm-hmm. That area,
northwest,
right?
Yeah.
Northwest, yeah. Okay. I mean, what's it like there? Is it booming? Is it like housing construction as far as the eye can see, or is it the middle of nowhere, or what is it?
Mass expansion growth of the 905 of, like more
massive
houses,
growth,
more
right?
Stuff. Yeah. But at the same time, not. So the question is it an area where, that is it an area where do we need to build more houses on the last remaining green space in the 905? Do we want to keep some of these protected spaces? Do we want parks? Do we want golf courses? Do we want those things that it would that it would plow through? So it is it's the 905 is obviously sort of does have this mix of that right at the edge of all of these very suburban neighborhoods will be a fair amount of green space that they actually want to live and enjoy, and partly why people left. If they came from Toronto, went there to have some more space.
Maybe we paint the highway green or something, placate everyone. But it is booming. It's booming, though, right?
I'm the driver of this group, I believe. I drive every day, and it is en route to when I.
Well, Andrew is a believer in the 15-minute neighborhood. Okay, he likes the 15-minute community. All right.
I do.
But it's a fast-growing area. That whole area, right?
Yes, but it also is managed by a growth plan in terms of and has a desperate need for affordable housing.
All right, so the Bradford bypass, Doug Ford was talking this up yesterday. It's not going to be tolled or anything. He said, no, we're going to build it, and whatever it costs, taxpayers are going to pay for it. But there is some controversy because there's political intrigue here. That they rerouted the Bradford bypass because Stan Cho's dad owns a golf course in the area. Is any truth to that, Andrew? What do you know about that, Andrew?
Well, I mean, that's the opposition playing politics. And of course, both of these projects are inherently political, right?
Sure.
Lindsay obviously talks about the green spaces. What I'm hearing that registers consistently at the top of the list is a demand for more supply in the housing market, and that's very distinguishable terms between affordable housing and houses that people can afford. So I think it's important to recognize that the infrastructure that exists to support the supply of more homes will lead eventually, hopefully, to lower prices in the market. But of course, as you've pointed out, the 905, York Region, and Peel, both very important areas that the Tories need to hang on to, and I think this is them responding to the needs of their constituents, and I think that's why you're seeing these two projects go ahead.
Okay, so on the 413, if you're Andrea Horvath, do you even fight that battle? What do you do, Lindsay? What do you do?
Yeah,
that's not fertile territory for you anyway.
No, it's not an area that she's deeply invested in, but it is a contrast of pointing out that just that all areas
competing
are not
visions
equal. Yeah, just it was cut Hamilton Transit and increase here, but actually Hamilton and the Greater Toronto Hamilton area is actually one of the fastest growth areas, a little even further southwest. So it is, it's something she can obviously continue to bring a contrast to, but the reason why you'll hear Stephen Del Duca and Andrea Horvath talking about it a lot is both the politics of it, but also what else you could be spending that money on, because it is a multi-billion-dollar project. And when you have so much opposition to it with all of the regional councils and mayors and those who are going to promote, that we shouldn't just pave over everything, and that, and in all fairness, remember, there's lots of conservatives that take transit, that don't think that it's not fighting the war on cars, that we just need to be responsible and do things like, obviously commuter lanes where people are, carpooling, all of these other options available to us.
And Del Duca has already said, I wouldn't do it. I would increase GO train service, and whatever I don't spend on Highway 413, I'll put it into, I believe he said education, I think he said.
Yeah, building schools, expanding classroom sizes to be able to, to have those limits, particularly while we'll still be concerned about distancing.
Do you think either of those strategies are going to be a success, Andrew?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that Lindsay brings up contrasts, and you hit the nail right on the head there, Rob. They're both saying no, and again, they're playing into the Premier's branding of
Doug Ford says yes. He's Mr. Yes. He's Premier Yes.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. And so I think Horvath and Del Duca are sort of being wedged into this place of like who can say no louder, and that's there's a very limited group that's sort of left on that side who will vigorously oppose these types of projects. But I would say, in addition to that, the additional politics, and we touched a bit on this last week, was again sort of resetting this relationship with unions, right? These are projects, these are big deals for labor unions. Let's not forget Ford had the backing in the last campaign from Loonie. Expect these announcements to sort of represent significant jobs, significant economic activity, and significant support from those workers.
Okay. Look, when we come back, I have to ask you about Premier suspenders. Okay. Randy Hillier starting his own political party. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, so independent MPP Randy Hillier says he's going to start his own political party. This is what he sounded like when he made the announcement this week. Go ahead, David.
This is a cultural war.
Cultural
and
war.
how we win cultural wars is also at the ballot box. So join with me. Sign up the Ontario First Party paperwork. PPC Ontario and the Purple Wave is here, and it will be on the ballot box, and I'll be leading them for the June election in 2020.
All right. Yeehaw. So Randy Hillier is going to start his own political party. He was a progressive conservative out of the landowners movement, been around a long time now. Never one to really go along to get along. Doug Ford ended up kicking him out.
Right.
And he's been on this COVID conspiracy thing for a long time now. But nevertheless, let's say he gets a lot of people signed up to run as candidates. Could it siphon support from the Doug Ford PCs enough to make a difference and hurt the re-election chances of the progressive conservatives in the next election? What do you think, Andrew?
So, Ross, this is going to date me a little bit, but I remember back to 2007, Randy was one of the only new elected PC MPPs. I was a junior staffer working for the leader, John Tory, at the time. And I remember going to his office to drop off a document. I walked in on him hacking darts by the window. And I was a smoker at the time. But I remember thinking, I'm pretty sure this is not allowed. And I think he caught on to the looks that I was sort of giving him. But, he didn't stop at all. And after a very short conversation, as I was leaving, he said, Andrew, and he took like a long drag from his smoke. And he looked at me and he said, it's good to perform acts of civil disobedience. And as I'm looking, and of course, exhaled like this huge cloud. Anyway, as you're playing that clip, I'm brought back to that moment. And look, Randy's had a long history in the party, a long history of the civil disobedience sort of before he entered the legislature. His position, obviously, a lot more tolerable in opposition than in government. That's why he's no longer there. But in terms of how this impacts the next election, I'll say, look, I think starting a new party is really hard. A lot of people oversimplify it by saying, it's not just the candidates, as you just mentioned, Rob, right? Like, you have to register the party, you have to find an organization to support all of these different 120 plus riding associations across the province. There's already a few fringe parties, the Trillium Party, the True New Blue Party with Jim Karahalios, now the Ontario First Party. I truly think that, if we're
so many choices,
looking at this,
so many choices.
Exactly. I don't think it gets off the ground with any significant impact. We talk a lot about, obviously, the PPC influence on the last election. Exit polls there suggest about 37% of PPC supporters were former CPC voters. You look at what the Tories got on election day, it was about 34%. So really, at the end of all that PPC talk, we're talking about a marginal impact of 2 or 3% more on the Tories than on the other parties.
Okay. You ever have a smoke with Randy Hillier at Queen's Park, Lindsay? Or
no. I will also date myself of that is the same era of I'm sure both John Tory and Tim Hudak wish that they had gotten rid of him in the world of when he did things like, write Leona Dombrowski, our agriculture minister, and name on a placard and put it on a deer that they shot. So there's all kinds of things that that Hillier has done that has been highly problematic for a long time, and he was never voted for because, again, in opposition, that was also going to cause them a problem in terms of holding the seat and the goal of trying to win government. The problem is now I do think they have a bit of a challenge in the sense that the People's Party did have a structure in the federal campaign. Yeah. They put together full slates of candidates. Hillier is a known name in Ontario because of his disruption antics. And there is a base there that would be more likely to go to something that has that kind of not that I wouldn't use the word momentum, but the thing that binds the far right. And and Doug Ford should be worried about that dissension. I mean, look, 1 in 9 or 1 in 10 of his caucus members that he elected in 2018 aren't there now, are not part of the party. So he has lost a number of people, and sure, he has room to play with, but it's not going to be the 2018 election. And anything where there is a distraction in the conservative base, it doesn't bode well for him. So there is, we can talk a lot about Andrea and Stephen fighting it out on the left, but there is an equal amount of play there and options for conservatives to consider where Doug Ford has not been a traditional conservative in their mind. So there's enough room to be concerned.
It'll be fun to watch, I'm sure. Thanks to both of you for this week.
Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, we'll speak soon. Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty, Lindsay Maskell, Andrew Brander from Crestview, former advisor to the Ford government. Derek Fage in for Sam LaPrade right after the noon news. I'm back tomorrow right after the 9 o'clock news, and this is City News.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.